I say this first. You don't have to be a pro rugby player. Rugby is like such a good way to just learn about life.
That's one thing that I'd say to any young kid coming through. Be willing to make sacrifices.
Keep evaluating what you're doing. Ask for help. Don't be embarrassed by anything. Don't do anything based on bravado or ego.
I definitely don't shy away from those failures and from the tough times, because I think that's what sets you up.
The Burgess Podcast has a purpose to motivate and inspire young rugby players through talking to role models in the game. In these podcasts, we get the opportunity to talk about the careers of a variety of different people in rugby, from academy players to European champions, and through this provide advice and motivation to all young rugby players.
So, welcome back to the 8th episode of the Burgess Podcast. Today we are joined by Saracens player Tom Whiteley. Tom, how you doing, mate?
Very well, thanks, James. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So, now, absolutely honoured to have you on today. Get things started with, how did you get into rugby? How did rugby come into your life?
I guess so. It started for me. My brothers and my cousins were big. I love rugby, and I was the youngest out of all of them. So one Sunday I got taken down. I think I was about 5. I don't think I was actually wanting to, but I got taken down to Battersea Ironsides in South London, just to basically watch, and ended up getting involved. And I guess haven't really looked back since. Just been one of those things that I jumped into and loved every second of it.
Definitely. Battersea Ironsides, if I'm right in saying, that's likes of Carl Sinclair. Is that where he started? I believe so. So obviously they've produced quite a few players.
Yeah, Carl Sinclair, to name a few, yeah. I was, to be fair, I was only there for, I guess, the junior section before I moved on. But I enjoyed it though. I enjoyed my time.
So, and also at school, you went to Millfield. What age did you start at Millfield? Was that in sixth form for rugby, or was that before?
No, I actually went there. I was quite lucky. I went down there when I was 13 in year 9. So things didn't work out in London, where at the school I was meant to go with my brothers. But I was very lucky in that respect to get a chance to go to Millfield.
Definitely, and obviously Millfield are well known for their rugby across the UK, one of the top rugby schools. How do you feel like your time there develops you as a player? Obviously, the calibre of coaches, the routine that they have with their rugby at that school.
I guess it's as close to professional setup as it can be without being professional setup, if that makes sense. It is literally you could sometimes there's gym before school, there's gym at lunchtime. And then you've got training sort of 3-4 times a week, which is more than what we do at Saracens sometimes. So
yeah, definitely.
In some ways, you can say it's even more professional. Obviously, the standards and the players, you get very, very, very different types of players. You get some players who are unbelievable, and then you get the other guys who are there enjoying their rugby, but are great players nonetheless, which is what was lucky about my year, I guess.
Definitely. And also, how did you find balancing rugby and academics? So obviously, a lot of people are so driven by rugby that academics can kind of fall under the bus. How did you find balancing academics with rugby, or were you just rugby?
Yeah, I've spoken about this a few times with a few different people. I actually regretted the way I did my academics at school. I guess I don't think I properly got into it as the way I'd like to, for various different reasons. But rugby was always what I wanted to do, and that's what I put all my eggs into. And if I was given the chance to go back and do it differently, I probably would. I went to a great school academic wise as well, but
yeah,
I don't think I made the most out of it. But something I wish I could change if I was to do it again.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's sometimes the case with like a lot of people come out of school, even not in rugby, they'll come out and they'll look back at their time at school and go, oh, I do wish I've done things differently. And for myself, obviously speaking to various rugby players and stuff like that, I was lucky enough to join my school on a rugby scholarship before I got a few too many concussions. And I think from being exposed to kind of rugby players from that early age, for me, there was no option of regretting anything at that school, because I've come from quite a humble background. The private school system for me is not something that I would have gone into if it wasn't for rugby. So I've definitely used that as an opportunity to excel, if you know what I mean. And I think the private school setup for rugby is second to none. It is brilliant. I think even middle tier rugby schools really, really benefit from having players that are on scholarships and stuff.
Definitely, yeah. And it was something that during the years I was there, my first year when I was there in year 9, the first team then was ridiculous. I think probably I reckon there's 6 or 7 professional rugby players. I think 3 internationals in that team when I was in my first year there, and then the team I finished in, I think there's 6 or 7 lads playing in the Premiership at the moment. So, we were pretty lucky in that respect. And to be fair, it was only in my 6th form where they brought in two lads, Callum Sheedy and Adam Hastings, sorry.
Yeah. And
they brought those 2 guys in during my 6th form time, which was pretty amazing.
That is crazy. So they bred them all from like year 9. That is very impressive. So as for academy rugby, you were involved in Harlequins Academy first as a kid. How did you get involved in Quins Academy?
Quins Academy was a little. So I grew up in South London, like I said earlier, but was at school in Millfield in Somerset, which is a completely different area, obviously. So I can't remember the exact way it happened or came about, but I got given the opportunity to go down to Quins, and the first game I played was actually against Saracens under-18s at Harrow Rugby Club, and a lot of the guys I played with at Saracens all playing that game. Marrow, Nick, Tompkins, just to name a few. And those guys playing that game, I remember absolutely bricking it before.
I can imagine.
Yeah, never met any of the Harlequins boys. Turned up on the day to play the game, and got stuck in. But I ended up playing a lot more than I thought I was going to. I think we lost by 60 points, but that's not the point. But I ended up at Quins off the back of that. But the hard thing was obviously being in Somerset, I couldn't get down to train during the week, so I made it a lot harder. So I was released sort of the end of my last 6th year, I think. So just when I was about 17, which it was just tough to take. But yeah, I had to move on.
Definitely, and I think a lot of people at that age, if you're in lower 6th and you've got released from a rugby academy, I feel like a lot of people at that point can go, "Oh right, that's for me. That's rugby over," and almost turn their back on it. But for you, that was different, and the opportunity to go to Bath, if I'm right in saying, came up. How did that come about, and why did you go to Bath Academy? Obviously, they're closer to Millfield.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's I guess the main point of it was I just moved from sort of fullback to scrum half when I did go to Bath, so I was new to the position. And yeah, so I spoke to head coach at Millfield, John Mallett and John Bremicombe. I said I still aspire to be a professional rugby player. I don't want to just leave it there. So they spoke to it was Danny Grucock, I think at the time. It was the academy coach at Bath, and they gave me a chance. I was only there for sort of a few months, and I got the feeling when I was there. So they had, I think it was Will Homer and another 9. I can't remember the other 9. But there's 3 of us basically, and obviously there's only one place for. Well, you think there's only one place for a 9. So it got to sort of March time, and I sort of just thought, there's no way I'm getting a contract here. I'm training, but I'm never going to be ahead of Will, who's a great player. He still is a great player. But I'm not going to get ahead of them because he's been in the setup since he was 13, 14. So
yeah, of course.
I ended up leaving, and yeah, that was sort of March time. I didn't have in my last year of school, so March 2014, I think it was. Didn't have an academy, and genuinely thought that I'd wasted a whole 6 years playing rugby, not taking my academics seriously. Thinking,
yeah, well, I can imagine that's quite a big decision to make at that time, and obviously it's worked out. And I think potentially one of the keys to that is in 2014, Rosslyn Park Sevens, obviously the biggest Sevens tournament, school rugby Sevens tournament in the world. You managed to win Player of the Tournament there. Describe the team's performance at Rosslyn Park Sevens that season. How Saracens then came about, maybe off the back of that.
Yeah, so we had a ridiculous season. That sounds a bit arrogant, but we did have a ridiculous season. We won literally everything leading up to it. So we were confident going into it. And obviously we had some good players in that team. And I think we got quite a lucky draw, if I remember correctly. Quite a lucky draw going into it, but then we played the second day 2. We had Sedbergh first up, which is probably
tough.
for Milford. Yeah, which is probably the biggest game for Millfield Sedbergh usually. So that was straight away a big game for us. And then we ended up playing. I think we played Brighton and then Wellington, and John Fisher on that second day. And it was just one of those days where everything clicked and didn't feel like I think Wellington was the closest we lost. We had won 12-7 was the closest game we had for the 2 days. But so like you said, off the back of it, I didn't know at the time, but there were 2 Saracens academy coaches watching there. So it was Rory Teague and Ian Vass. Yeah, Vassy now the Northampton defence coach. But so they were watching, and we were actually on our way to Sedbergh 10s because you go Rosslyn Park 7s, day off, and then you got to Sedbergh 10s which was actually at Worcester at 6 ways for. So I'm literally on the bus on the way there, and I've got a call from an unknown number, not a clue who it is. I usually never answer it, but I answer it, and it was Teague, Rory Teague, and he said, "Do I want to come down on a 2-week trial at Saracens during the half term of school?" And obviously, my heart stopped.
Yeah, of course.
I actually didn't know how to react, to be honest with you, but obviously I said yes. Called my family, told my family straight away, and they were like, "You can't turn this down." I was like, "No way, I'm turning this down." And went down there for 2 weeks, and it was a pretty surreal 2 weeks. It was it flew by. Like the first day I was there, I was made to stand up in a team meeting. Al Sampson gets me up in front of the team meeting. Never met any of these guys. The skinny little 18-year-olds weighing about 60 kilos. I'm stood up in front of the team meeting, and they show some highlights show some Sevens highlights on the screen behind me, and everyone's going mental. And it was a pretty surreal moment, and one I'll never forget.
I can imagine, and that almost a common thing that I've seen with a lot of these professional players I've talked to is there's these trigger moments in people's careers that almost give that. Obviously, as a kid, you aspire to be a professional rugby player and you're motivated, but then you almost need that next level to go, "All right, no, I actually do want to be a professional rugby player," and almost ignite that flame to really, really, really work hard. And how do you feel that first training session with Saracens? What was that experience like? Obviously, that must have been very surreal playing alongside, I don't know, Richard Wigglesworth and stuff like that. How was that?
So it was a strange one, and I like you said, these are trigger moments. But I remember the session to today. I was trained on the wing on the bibs, obviously the team training against the first team. But I think all the internationals were getting rested that week, so I was on the bibs team with, you can imagine, all the internationals who weren't playing on the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I trained. I did the whole session on the wing. Didn't play scrum half once. But the big moment for me, which made me love the club straight away, was Neil de Kock goes out his way completely and takes me to the side, knowing that was a scrum half, and hopefully signed there at the end of that season. And did a half an hour, 45-minute session, me passing and kicking, and that was a special moment for me because I never had that sort of one-to-one sort of care and love in a way that someone genuinely cared and wanted to help me to get better. And yeah, it was a moment I'll never forget.
I can imagine. So I've also done a podcast with Chris Wiles, obviously Saracens as well, and he said that the family environment at Saracens and the whole feel at Saracens is just something he won't ever forget, and that's why he stayed at Saracens so long. So is that the case for you as well over your time at Saracens? Do you really feel that family environment and the environment at Saracens is like almost what helps the team excel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Wilesy didn't speak to you about all the trips or anything, but
no, he didn't.
That is a big part of it, is the way you get looked after. That when I first joined, it was one of the first things I was drilled into me was we'll get treated unbelievably well. We work unbelievably hard. And there's no beating around the bush about that, because we work unbelievably hard during the week to play on the weekends, and every sort of 4 or 5 months we get taken on a trip for 2 days at most, maybe 3 days. And the first sort of 3 hours of being there is all about social capital and getting to know each other better. So you get into groups of 5 or 6 and you just speak and you have a few beers with each other and you forget about the rugby. And there's no talk about rugby. It's getting to know each other and getting to love each other a bit more. And that brings us so much closer on the pitch. You you don't really, I guess, realise it until you're actually in it in the bubble, I guess, in the Saracens bubble, and how much people do care for each other. I mean, you're just having a beer. There's plenty of moments I could talk about, but memories that stick out. One in St Anton was sat looking over the ski slopes, not allowed to ski, but they're having a few beers and we're all fancy dress. And I talk about those rugby moments I'll never forget, but those sort of moments probably last longer with me, just because of the way we became closer as a team.
Definitely, and I think that's something that is an absolute credit to rugby, is that offside social aspect of rugby is almost, you could argue, as big as the actual rugby. I mean, definitely with the grassroots level, the social side of rugby probably is bigger than the rugby, to be honest. And I think that is what makes the sport so good. It's like it's such a social event as well as a sport that everyone loves.
Exactly, yeah, and that's what's, I guess, what makes people fall in love with the sport. It's getting beaten up on the weekend and having a few beers and enjoying time with your mates and waking up feeling like absolute crap, but then enjoying and doing it all over again on Monday. So
exactly,
it's worth it. Yeah.
So now moving in more into your playing career, you spent a good amount of time on loan at different clubs. How have these times on loan impacted your development? Obviously, like playing down, obviously being Saracens, you're always in the spotlight to perform, there's pressure, but getting the opportunity to play for maybe smaller clubs and just enjoy rugby and learn, how do you think these impacted your development?
Massive, and I think it's overshadowed when you see all these guys doing amazingly well. There's a few sort of people who didn't go on loan who've made it straight away, but it's very rare for that to happen. I think you don't realise how important loan clubs are. And I think I counted the other day. I think I went in 3 years. I went to 7 loan clubs or something, just so I could play, learn the game in different ways. And it wasn't because of the position I play, scrum half. It's quite hard to go into a team straight away because every team has 2 scrum halves.
Yeah.
So it's hard to go into a team and go straight into the starting team. So in my first year, I was on old Albanians. Andy Holloway, the coach, if you ever listens to it, he'll remember this, I'm sure. But I was on the bench for the first 7 games. I played 15 minutes of rugby in my first year at Saracens. So, and the whole point was for me to go there and get game time. And
of course.
So straight away after that 7th game of being on the bench, I asked to go on loan somewhere else. And then for that year, I went to 3 or 4 different clubs just to get game time. But it was worth it in the end, definitely.
Definitely. And is there a specific loan spell that you went to that sticks out to you or that think you developed you the most?
Yeah, there's 2. There's 2. Rosslyn Park, I went on loan to for a season, which I loved because, one, it's close to home and it's the club I grew up playing for. But like we spoke about earlier, the social sides, and I learned about that, and I learned about lads who genuinely just care for the club and want to turn up every weekend. These guys work in the city all day and then turn up on the weekend and play. It's amazing. But then for me, the one that sort of, I guess, changed my rugby for the better was Bedford. And that was 2 years ago. And that was just the style of rugby they played was completely different to what I'm used to at Saracens. It's a lot more free flowing and chucking the ball about. And obviously, I've learned the side from Saracens' way, I guess, the kicking side of it. But to learn a different way of how to play rugby is amazing. It's credit to them, the way they play, because they're always contesting for a top 5, top 4 space in the championship, which isn't an easy competition, as we've found out already this year. But
definitely. And I think that's something that, like, obviously Premiership rugby's this huge high level of rugby. But a lot of people do underestimate the level of the champ. Like, I've spoken to a few London Irish players, and obviously London Irish had their relegation fights, stuff like that. And a lot of them saying when they got relegated, it was almost like, we'll kind of breeze this league, if you know what I mean, which they kind of did. But at the same time, the first 5-6 games, you turn up and you've seen this prop that looks about 40 years old, yet he absolutely ruins these other props in the scrum. And it's just like, stuff like that. Like, you have this perception that it's not as high quality, but these players are good.
Yeah, and they're in the championship for a reason. Like, they're good players, and that's something that you can't underestimate. And like Saracens, they care for each other because they've been at the same club for a few years. And so it's always interesting playing like when we used to play Bedford in pre-season games, and it's always close for at least 60 minutes. And it's not they're not the sort of games where you walk into and you put 40 of them in the first half. It's never going to happen because they're so up for it and they properly care and they're good rugby players. And they're big, like you said, they're big and they know how to cheat in a scrum, which is
exactly,
which is correct. I don't know much about scrums, but I know for a fact they do it. And yeah, I think it's brilliant. It's a great competition, and it's one that I wish I played a little bit more in my time when I was at Bedford. But I loved every second of it.
Definitely, and obviously now Saracens being in the Championship, you are effectively every team's final. Like every team's going to go into a game thinking, right, if we put points on Saracens, that's almost be a highlight of the season. So how do you reckon the team will deal with that pressure in the Championship, obviously, if everything with COVID sorts itself out?
It's interesting. So when we played Ealing a few weeks ago, and you could, like you said, it is their World Cup final, and they came out firing. And for us, and we let it happen to us on a few weeks back. It's not letting them get under our skin because it's easy. Because they know they've got nothing to lose because we should win the game every day of the week.
Yeah.
But they go into it with nothing to lose, and it's their World Cup final. And for them, at home especially, when we played Ealing, and they came out firing, and we just gave away loads of penalties because we basically let them get under our skin. And it's great for these younger guys at Sarries coming through, your Manny Winnapolas and the rest of them, for them to learn how to deal with that sort of pressure, because it's a different type of pressure you deal with in the Premiership, because in the Premiership they're better rugby players and they can put pressure on you in different ways with putting the balls into the corner and kicking you into areas. But no team in the Premiership tries to get under your skin like any team in the Championship does.
I
it's
can
completely
imagine.
different. And it's fun, it's interesting, and we're expecting the same when we play Ealing this weekend. We're expecting exactly the same because I think at the end of the day, that's how they beat us. We gave away 18 penalties, I think it was, and you can't beat any team giving away 18 penalties. So
definitely,
it's interesting.
And so now moving on to when you made your debut for Saracens, that was against Gloucester. Managed to score a try that game. Describe that moment after being on a few loan spells. Obviously the hard work you've been through as a youngster. How was that moment for you?
It was a strange one. It was because obviously I've been training at scrum half for 3 years before it. I was expected to make my debut at scrum half, but ended up being at fly half because of various injuries. And Mark McCall spoke to me. That's the start of that season, because I think Max Maylands got injured pretty badly at the start of it, and he was like, "There's every chance that you can play fly half in the LV Cup for the season." Something I'd never done in my life. Which is a great learning curve for me. But yeah, the experience was amazing. I was lucky. It was Gloucester away in front of a packed King's Home on Poppy Day, and it was. I know we lost last play, but I still remember the atmosphere when they scored in the corner last play. And I shouldn't really be saying this because we obviously lost, but it was ridiculous, and that sort of moment will last me forever. Definitely,
and I think it's experiences like that like. The result at the end of the day, you're not going to look back and really hold on to the result. You're going to hold on to the experience and the before the game, the after the game. And I think an experience like that for anyone's just so surreal. Obviously, when you have this, everyone has their vision in their head of walking out on the pitch for making your debut. Yeah. Did it match up in your head, your vision of walking out for Saracens to actually what the experience was, or was it like 10 times better?
To be honest with you, the first 15 minutes were a blur because I'd never played fly half before. I'd literally trained that week at fly half. Literally all that was going through my head was like, just don't muck up, just pass the ball early and get around the corner and do the simple stuff, like the reason you've been put there for. So, but it was a blur. Like I remember we were stood in a minute silence before the game. I couldn't stand still. I was shaking. But those are sort of moments that make you better, and I'm grateful for that opportunity I got given because it was risky to give me the chance to play at fly half that year, but it's one that I've savoured and enjoyed doing.
Definitely, and also with Saracens, you've had the opportunity to represent them at sevens tournaments and 10 tournaments. Obviously, especially the sevens tournament, that's a chance for loads of youngsters to get their chance playing for Saracens or the other Premiership clubs. We've seen the likes of Marcus Smith make their name in that sevens tournament. How do these challenges differ to obviously the Premiership, which is obviously going to be a lot harder, trained a lot harder for? But what are these sevens and 10s tournaments like?
Well, the 10s was good fun. That we went to Mauritius for it, which was more of an end of season trip, but it was good fun. We actually did pretty well considering the team we had down there. But the Sevens is a brilliant tournament, and one that I was obviously excited for when I first left school. It was the one that I wanted to get involved in straight away. But it is all the best academy players playing against each other on the same size pitch with less people on the pitch. So there's some brilliant talent on the pitch. There's some guys who can beat you one-on-one. There's guys who can run over you. And some of the athletes you play against, like you're playing against these second rows who can run quicker than you. I remember that in my first tournament, I think it was James Chisholm, it might have been, who I thought was like a bit of a lumbering sort of number 8, but got the ball in the wing and ran around me or over me or one or the other. But I remember that pretty well. But I've enjoyed every second of that Sevens tournament.
Definitely, and I think that's true. Like when you watch the Sevens, you obviously you think it's more of a game for backs, but as the game's evolving, like you can see probably a number 8 go up in a Sevens game and burn a winger. Like once these flankers at number 8s are at full tilt, I wouldn't want to get in the way of any of them, honestly.
No. Yeah, you're more of a speed bump at the end of the
day. Yeah, exactly. And also, you've been a pretty integral part of the Saracen Storm side and playing games in that. How has getting the regular game time with them been for you? And obviously, again, that's an opportunity for loads of players to get games if you're not always making the first team. So how's that been for you at Saracens? It's
great, yeah. So we train during the week. So obviously it's the team playing the weekend, but the team who aren't playing, there was like a 2-year period where we train during the week as a team and then play on the Monday night. So we're always training together. Like the first team would, they train for their game on the weekend, then we'd go watch the game and then play on the Monday night. So we weren't trying to play any different. We were always trying to play the Saracens way because it's good to show the coaches that you can play the way that they want to. It's very easy because it would be very easy to go into those sort of games and it's not really that important because it's the A-League and no one really cares about it. But at the end of the day, all the coaches watch that and they want to see their young players playing the way that they want to play in the first team.
Exactly.
And that's what's great about the competition. It gives the chance for these young guys. And you've seen, I think, our team we played in the final against Newcastle 2019 had the likes of Ben Earl playing, Chris Tollifer, who plays for Toulon now.
Yeah.
Nick Azikwe played in the semi-final. So it's definitely a pathway for guys to play in. It's a brilliant tournament for that.
Definitely, and I think so. For example, if you were a youngster and you had the one opportunity to play for either go on loan and play for a club in the Champ or play A-League rugby, what would you decide?
That's a tough question. It'd have to be where I was in my career at the time. If I was starting out, I'd say loan because you've got to learn how to play men's rugby first because it's so different to playing schoolboy rugby.
Yeah.
But I think I did it. Hopefully, I did it the right way. Where I did loan, and I had a good 2 to 3 years of playing Storm and LV.
Yeah.
Which put me in good stead for whenever I had to step up to the first team. I was always ready for it because I've played so much in the Storm team to be ready for it.
Definitely. And so now kind of more onto more recent times, taking us back to kind of March last year. Obviously COVID hit. For yourself, how did COVID impact you? Obviously not being able to train, definitely. How did you overcome the hurdles that COVID did bring?
I went home to, which at the time, I think I said it earlier, I went home to spend it with my family because I actually, looking back, and I hadn't been at home since I left to go to boarding school, so since I was 13, so it was nice. It was nice to go spend some quality time with my family and catch up on times like that. But I spent it on Clapham Common, a lot of it, running up and down the Aussie rules pitch. They've got and passing against a goal post, and every time I missed, I pick it up again. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. I can understand why people didn't enjoy it and found it hard, but it gave me a chance to properly think about my rugby and hone down my skills that I need to be to make it in the position I want to make it in. So it came maybe at the right time for me. I think. Because I definitely, my skills have improved because of it.
Definitely, and I think that's such a key thing. Like obviously, a lot of people hear lockdown, and their straight mindset is, we're going into lockdown, my mindset's going to go into lockdown, and I just get grumpy and moody. But really, it's such a weird time, but such a good time for just to be selfish and just personal development. Like, you don't need to worry about a Friday night going to the pub, Saturday night going to the pub, whatever like that. Obviously, you probably wouldn't be going to the pub on a Friday, Saturday night if you've got a game. But like, but for a lot of other people, it's a good chance for like personal development. And obviously, you said that there, that for yourself, your skills have improved. But what would you say for yourself was the biggest challenge over lockdown?
It was not having a routine. Which I changed towards the second half of it. But at any club, you get sent your schedule on Sunday nights. You know exactly what's happening minute to minute when you're at the club. And I found that really hard until we got to a point, I think it was about sort of 4 or 5 weeks in, maybe 6 weeks. I started writing my own programs, giving myself, I'll write on my laptop every Sunday night. And I write down exactly what I'm going to do every day.
Yeah.
And stick to it. And that made it a lot easier. It made the days go quicker. I obviously would write in between the time I was allowed to game. I'd spend sort of a gym in the morning, go to the park, run, do fitness, and then play Warzone, and then maybe do some more at the end of the day. So I made sure that I got the best of both worlds during lockdown. Definitely,
because you've always got to find that time for the stuff you enjoy, the downtime, the stuff away from rugby, and I think that's important for anyone. Like, obviously, that you live and breathe rugby. But it would be unhealthy if you didn't have moments where you didn't think about rugby.
100%.
And so, more into some more recent news. It's been recently announced that you've signed a 2-year deal with Bristol, starting next season. How did that come about?
A lot of stress and a lot of times not knowing what to do. A lot of times speaking to my brother and my agent and my family. But at the end of the day, it felt like the right thing to do. I've loved the 7 years I've been at Saracens, the 6-7 years I've been at Saracens, and I'd never change that. But for me, it felt like the right thing to do at the right time, and I can't wait for it. Obviously, I've got this season ahead of Saracens that I'm also very excited for, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that Saracens are back where they deserve to be at the end of the season. But yeah, there's a long nearly 3 months, I think it was, of debating whether this was the right decision for me. It was tough, but
I can imagine, because obviously Saracens have been such a big part of your rugby career, and they've almost moulded you into the player that you are today. And to almost leave that all behind for a new journey must be a very hard decision. But looking back on your time at Saracens, what would you say is the most key, if you can pick one thing that has been the most key point of your career at Saracens that has allowed you to excel as a player? What would you say that be, if there is anything, if you can put a finger on anything?
I think it's the chance to lead teams and be a leader in the squads, because I was never a leader before I came to Saracens. I'm not saying I'm the best leader in the world right now, but learning from the likes of Brad Barrett and Owen and those sort of people, the leaders, you can see like the way they lead is unbelievable. I was lucky enough to captain Saracens a few times in a few first team games, and that's definitely the big part of it, and it's something I want to carry on. It's not something that I'm just going to leave at Saracens and never try and be a leader again, but I've loved having that sort of extra responsibility on the pitch.
Definitely, and also that gives you that next level of as a player, having that element of leadership in your locker. So coming into obviously your final season with Saracens, like you said, you want to get them back up to the Prem and whatever. What is your personal goal for this season, if you have a goal to achieve? It's
probably a simple answer of constantly improving, making sure that I'm ready for when my new chapter does start. But it's honestly to be as positive as I can and enjoy the last 4 or 5 months I've got left at this club, because it's given me so much, and it's going to be emotional when I leave. I know for a fact that it's going to be emotional when I leave. For me personally, I don't know how sad the lads will be, but for me it will be. And so I'm going to make the most of it, and every session I'm going to give it my all. Every gym session I'm going to try and give it my all. But yeah, that's that for me.
Definitely, and also, so obviously when you go to join Bristol, obviously they're doing pretty well at the moment. They're not doing bad at all. They're performing well. They're playing nice rugby as well. Obviously the game against Bath at the weekend was very impressive. What's your goal when you go to Bristol? What do you want to step on and improve your career at Bristol doing?
Well, it's getting to a stage in my career where I've got to hopefully push on to what I want to do. And I think Bristol's a great platform for it. It's a different way of playing rugby. Like I said earlier about learning different ways to play at loan clubs. This is now going to be a completely different way to play rugby I know that, and I've spoken to Pat about it, and but I hopefully can bring that sort of control side of the game as well. I've learned at Saracens, and hopefully that can help Bristol go further. Definitely.
And so to kind of final off the rugby side of things, if you could give one piece of advice to any young rugby players, what would that be?
To understand that it's never going to be plain sailing. No career ever just goes in a straight line to the top and you stay there.
Yeah.
And I've had injuries. This takes into account injuries, getting dropped, and it took me a long time to realise that. I used to get so depressed if I wasn't picked to play in a game, or I'd be on the bench and I wouldn't get on. I'd be depressed, and you just have to take those. That's part of sport, and you just have to understand that. And won't you understand that, your performances and training and in the game, they'll stay the same, or they won't be as big of a difference between a bad performance and a good performance, because you're always constantly in that middle zone of knowing that there's going to be ups and downs.
Definitely, and I think that's such a good point. Like the younger you can build that resilience to these moments, and almost it is better to, although every academy teenager wants to just go, yeah, I want to be the best in the academy. It's almost, you could argue, better to get the knockbacks then and build the resilience then for when you do potentially get your chance as a professional. You've built that resilience, you've built that discipline to come back in them tough times.
Exactly that.
And look, obviously, I've seen on your Twitter that you're a fellow Arsenal fan. I can't help but ask a few questions about Arsenal, as I'm an Arsenal fan. First question is, what is your opinion on this whole situation with Mesut Ozil? Obviously, he's gone off to Fenerbahce now, bloody brilliant. But what was your opinion on it?
Oh, obviously, like every Arsenal fan, I would have loved for him to. I don't know about every Arsenal fan, but I would have loved for him to play a little bit more before he left. But I think it was the right decision to let him go in January. Because there was obviously stuff going on behind the scenes that we'll never know about. But
yeah,
I think it was the right decision at the end. But obviously, I would have liked to get a bit more for his money before he left.
Definitely, and also obviously January transfer window's just ended. We've cleared out a lot of deadwood. I think we've freed up about 780 grand worth of weekly wages. Do you think that's leading up to a big summer signing? And if so, who would you like to see sign for Arsenal in summer?
I've said this plenty of times. I want Jack Grealish.
I knew you were going to say that. I don't know why. That's who I want. I want Jack Grealish as well. I think we all crying out for creative.
When I play football, I see myself as Jack Grealish. So that's what I'd love to have at the club.
100%. And final one on Arsenal before we wrap up the podcast. Where do you think we're going to finish the season?
This is answering my heart or my head.
Go with your heart first, and then go with your head. Give two, because honestly, I know where I realistically think we'll finish, but I know where I want to finish definitely.
I think we'll finish top 4.
Yeah, I agree.
But my head's telling me probably 7th, maybe 8th.
Yeah, see, I think deep down, I'm looking at the table. I'm thinking there's only a few points in it. Really, we can get top 4. Realistically, is that probably going to happen? I'm not sure. As long as we can secure Europa League. It is. This is probably the most critical part of our season. But look, we're probably boring people because this is a rugby podcast. So let's not talk anymore about Arsenal. And look, Tom, it's been an absolute honour to have you on the podcast, and wish you all the best with the rest of the season and obviously your time at Bristol.
I appreciate it, mate. Thank you very much.